the Premier credit her with doing a significant amount of groundwork on this already. So if that is the case, then it should not be difficult to bring it to the House long before December 31st, 2026. But what I can say is this. The notion that they were planning on doing it is nonsensical at best. It's a farce, it's a lie, for as Corey says, a lie from the pit of hell. Because if it is that was the case, then why is it was not mentioned before in the legislative agendas that were presented by Corey Justin Hodge, two legislative agendas and two major addresses on Angular Day, 2025 and 2026. At no point in time was it mentioned. At no point in time. One of the things that we also asked to be done is that unestablished workers in the Angular Public Service be considered for pension as well. And Shelley Rogers Webster again gave a guarantee and gave a promise that that will be done. And I will give her the benefit of the doubt and believe that it will be done. Now, today she was on radio, and one of the fascinating things she said is that she got from an inside source of the Angular Progressive Movement that the only thing that we can talk about is the London House. And the record will show that, yes, we have talked about the London House because we believe that it's an exercise in futility. It's a ridiculous and obnoxious and careless proposition. But we've talked about many other things. We've talked about the Island Harbor basketball court and the fact that the steel is up there. And the husband of one of their members who they have appointed as part of their team is literally on Facebook saying that it's scrap metal. You know, that says so much about the Angular United Front in their desire to look out for the youth of Angola, to ensure that the people of Angola are looked after and to put people first. It says a lot. And I don't understand for the life of me how Jason Bryan, Cardell Richardson, and Jose Van der Poel is not on the front line. Even Kyle Hodge is not on the front line trying to push to ensure that that Island Harbor basketball court is done. I don't understand it because there's no way that could have happened under the Angola Progressive Movement.
You know, we're gonna come back to lots of unfinished business that this current administration is leaving on the table, leaving to rot. But I really want to get back to the idea of the current administration and that there's work being done and that there's work that has been done on this piece of legislation, the pension scheme for parliamentarians. And Hayden, you spoke to it in terms of it's not been on the legislative agenda. We've not seen it. We've not heard anything about it. And most notably, we just recently celebrated 50 years of having a parliament, and members had opportunities to speak during several sittings, special sittings. And I would think that if this is something that was in the works, that would have been the most opportune time to have spoken about it. So
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. That was a great opportunity because you notice that both the speaker and I have spoken about the need for a separate parliament. We have spoken about that every time we have had a chance to speak as it relates to the 50th anniversary. So why is it that if you were thinking about legislators' pension and a contributory aspect to the legislators' pension, that was a great time, as you said, to bring it up.
Yeah, it brings to mind a question. How much weight does a parliamentarian's voice, their words carry in
a lot of weight?
In the House, specifically in the House of Assembly, because you can have some throwaway comments on Facebook that we've seen with that has led us. Some throwaway comments that has led us to a fiasco.
But I think you should mention that comment in particular, because Shelley Rogers Webster made a comment on Facebook that, as you said, led to a fiasco, and that was related to the compensation for public servants.
Correct.
And I think that she speaks out of turn often. You know what I mean? And I don't understand for the life of me why she continues to do so, because you have to be certain that this thing is ready to go. And not because it was passed through legislation. No, we were trying to help them. America and I was trying to help them because what we were saying to them is don't pass it. Because there's a minority of public servants who are dissatisfied. Don't pass it, move forward. And those persons who are dissatisfied, you can deal with them separate and apart and then deal with them retroactively, right? But they went ahead and paused it, and to my mind, tried to lay the blame at the foot of the permanent secretary, finance, and the deputy governor, which was absolutely ludicrous because neither of them tabled it. Neither of them passed it through executive council firstly, and neither of them tabled it in the parliament, and they didn't vote. As far as my vision, because I can see the deputy governor, I don't remember him voting at all. He may have voted, but I can't remember him saying aye. So the reality is that we voted along with the government. We all voted unanimously. All of the elected members voted unanimously for the pay increase for the public servants. So for the life of me, I don't understand why then, after the fact, after bragging that you have done it, then say, well, it ain't us. It's the APM. It's the deputy governor, because remember Shelley Rogers Webster tried to lay to the blame to Dr. Webster and the APM.
Yes.
And then the deputy governor said, well, not necessarily so, because both the deputy governor's office, the deputy governor, and the public administration, the PS public administration, and the Department of Public Administration are the ones who worked on the terms of reference. And then Cora said, well, it's them. You know what I mean? So they definitely can't get their lives together. They seem to have a very unique way of lying. Even as it relates to the Legislators Pension Act, you see Neil Rogers saying something completely different to them, right? So there seems to be a confusion there. What I would advise the government of Angola to do, the Angola United Front administration, is to take some time out and get their lives together. Because it's not cutting it the way they're doing things, because we all see them all over the place. For example, there was a time when a question was asked about the North Hill Road, and Cardell Richardson, who's responsible for roads, parliamentary secretary responsible for roads, said basically nothing was done as it relates to the North Hill Road. And then the minister of infrastructure, Joseph Van der Poel, on the same day and in the same press conference, said, well, no, that's not true. These things have been done for the North Hill Road. You know what I mean? So, and for Shelley, again, I want to say for Shelley Rogers Webster to say that the only thing that we talk about is the London House. They forget we talk about Anglic. They forget we talk about renewable energy. They forget we talk about the Caracas Bay building. They forget that we talk about the road infrastructure and the things that they have paused to reflect and to reconsider. They forget the fact that we have gone from number 1 to number 9 in 1 year, right? And they forget about the long lines at Blowing Point that we have given suggestions as to how to remedy these things. They forget the things that we have suggested, such as removal of the USL and removal of property tax on public buildings and so forth. Dr. Webster gave a major address on these things. They forget we talk about all these things. There's so many things that we speak about that this Angola United Front is dropping the ball on. Yet they say that the only thing that we speak about is the London House.
Well, since they've forgotten, and I think tonight we are going to remind them. And
yes.
So, Quincy, I will allow you to jump in here with any commentary that you have at this point before we sort of switch gears a little bit.
Good evening, everyone. It is always a pleasure to be on APM Online. Just want to make sure that you can hear me well.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Right there. I was listening to Honorable Hayden Hughes comment, and I want to begin by congratulating the opposition, including Merrick and Dr. Webster, for bringing forth the opposition, as in this opposition's first motion to the House of Assembly. And in the last, I want to say 6 years, this is the first motion being brought forward by an opposition. And so I want to congratulate the APM's opposition, because it really goes to show that the opposition is not just there to show up and criticize the government's agenda or support the government's agenda. There's a lot of work that the opposition can do to support progress in Anguilla and even in the parliament as a parliament institution itself. And so I'm very proud of our opposition members and the work that they have done and the work that I know that they will continue to do as they have plans to do more things into the future. When we were doing the Lansing Bowl Cultural Center, I dubbed our crew the Do Things Crew, Do Things Crew. And that name stuck. And again, even in opposition, it shows that we are not lying down, we're not dormant. And I'm very proud of the work that you guys have done so far. And especially because this was the one that you decided to go forward with in the first instance. I think it shows an opposition that is in tune with what the wants of the people of Anguilla. It also shows an opposition that works with what is relevant. I think right now we are considering the salary reviews, and when not a better time to consider contributions to the pension fund by legislators than now. Our time in government, the APM's time in government, we were amongst the lowest paid elected officials in Anguilla's modern history. And we continue to do work in spite of that. And that was not a thing that really fueled us to say, okay, well, we don't want X, Y, and Z, or we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. We just continue to show up for the job because at the end of the day, before anything, you are elected to represent. And now when the elected officials are getting raises, ministers are getting substantial raises, and allowances, I think this is the time to really have proper consideration for how elected officials can contribute to a fund that's already under some level of pressure. And because they will be getting more as a salary, it means that they'll be taking more through the pension process. And so you would think any government who has been sitting on the salary review for the last year and a half would have had the wherewithal to say, because we have a general idea of the fact that the salaries will increase, let us ensure that in tandem with the introduction of the salary increases, we will also ensure that legislators are also contributing to the pension bill. They wouldn't wait for the salary increases to come, because we know that we're only at a point where the salary increases have not been done because they went back to the table. But had it been moved forward as planned, we would have already had legislators receiving an increased salary without any conversation for a contribution to the pension, which means then that the pension would have had to be considering this period that legislators are not contributing, but still would be expected to be covered by the pension scheme. So, I mean, this whole thing about the fact that they were doing it and they were in consideration and such and blah and blah, it doesn't make any sense, because timeline-wise, any reasonable, good thinking, smart set of people would have done it to ensure that it was done with the salary increase. Not only that, the current legislators and the current government cannot unilaterally decide what the pension scheme and contribution should look like. What honorable organization would do would be to have a pension contribution committee set up by the House to ensure that it is a bipartisan bill that's brought to the House and a bipartisan process, because all elected officials will be impacted by this. So it shouldn't be something, we even hearing now that not all members of the elected government are aware of what is going on. So it shouldn't be 2 or 3 persons, or Shelia speaking to herself and saying, I know that I'm bringing this forth. It should be a transparent, open, well-communicated process that is more than likely led by an auditor or someone who has the ability to know where the fund is and what the fund can handle, and make the necessary suggestions for the legislation. The fact that none of this has happened and they're coming and saying that it's in advanced stages, a joke. It's a joke. Where is the Executive Council minutes that has officially starting this process and giving directive to the AG's chambers to start work on this. There's a whole government is an entirely different ecosystem. And so a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, the Angola United Front like to take advantage of the fact that people are not aware of the process. But if anyone can go back to my House of Assembly contributions, I would always say that I was stunned by how much goes into government. And I think it's important as a parliamentarian to teach persons about the process of government more so than tell them what we are doing, because things need to make sense. And because you're never going to work in the public sector unless you work in public sector. It's more likely going to work in different places in private sector, but unless you work in government and in particular parts of government, you would not believe the way how government operates. And government does not, let me just finish. Government does not operate with one minister looking at legislation and saying it's done. Hayden?
Yes, I was going to tell you, stick a pin. I want you to explain to the public how these things get to Parliament. Not even what the process in which something like this gets to Parliament, the whole process, starting with the conceptualization of the idea. I think that is important for you to explain to the public.
Well, first it would begin with some sort of concept notes that will be done by the permanent secretary in tandem with the minister. So the minister will speak to the permanent secretary, let them know where the intentions, what the intention would be.
Give an example though, give an example.
Let's talk about legislative pension, legislators' contribution to the pension scheme. So it would begin with the relevant minister, which would more than likely be the Minister of Finance, who will speak to their PS and say, this is a policy that I would like to advance. And the PS will come up with a paper or a memo, present it to Executive Council. There is a step that they can also present it to Cabinet first. You get Cabinet approval. In our as a constitution, the Cabinet does not necessarily carry the same weight as Executive Council. So you can, in practice, carry something to Executive Council without bringing it to Cabinet. But just for ensuring that the members, the elected officials are aware of what is happening before it's brought to the executive level meetings, you'll have a Cabinet meeting. And then you will then bring that to Executive Council. You go to Executive Council and the action.
Don't forget the formulation of the policy paper even before you get to Executive Council.
Right, I touched on that. Yeah. Right. And so there'll be an accompanying policy paper, and then that would be brought to Executive Council. So the members of the council will agree, amend, do whatever they would like to do. It is then agreed.
And the policy paper, is developed by whom?
The policy paper will be developed by the relevant minister.
So the minister themselves are the ministry, persons within the ministry.
Well, it comes from the minister, but the technocrats contribute to the production of the paper.
Of the paper, so, and the minister will first ensure that the policy paper reflects exactly what he or she wants to do before it even goes on to Cabinet to Executive Council.
Right. Okay. So in an instance such as the Legislators Pension Act, the relevant authority in terms of ministry would not be the Ministry of Social Development, the Ministry of Youth and Culture and Education. That would not be the relevant ministry. So I'm not quite sure how and why Shelley is a person who would be spearheading something that has nothing to do with her ministry. It would have to come from the relevant minister. And it is brought to Executive Council. From Executive Council, there will be actions. So this ministry, this person, this group of people, this department, this unit, whatever, would have to do these actions. It will then be ratified by the Executive Council, and the clerk, by way of the deputy governor, would pass on whatever relevant information to the different parties that will be involved in spearheading this and making sure it happens. So there will be some directive from, let's say, the Ministry of Finance to the AG's chambers to work on this legislation. And it likely will give timelines or how they would want it to look. Now, with something like the Legislators Pension Act, we would need a proper auditor to talk about how the contribution should be and how the scheme should go, and it'll be an independent process. And so part of the work would also be mobilizing funds to ensure that the government of Anguilla can pay PwC to come in, audit, review the act, and then give us a suggestion of how the scheme and contribution should go. So it's not a willy-nilly process. It's something that to ensure sustainability, and there's science, there's maths, there's an equation that goes behind that. Then that is brought forward. Somewhere in this process, you begin to have consultation with existing parliamentarians, and also possibly when you get back the feedback from the auditor, you will then bring that to the public, because all members of the public, once they're eligible, can run for office. So all members of the public should be aware of this new scheme. It's not something that should be done behind closed doors. You go through that entire process, you then come back to Executive Council with the legislation that must then be approved by the Executive Council. So you see that all of that has to be done. None of this has been officially begun, has officially begun. And you might decide to make some changes, go back, or you might find that it's in line with what is happening across the region or whoever else you may want to compare yourself with. The opposition would have used, I think, Cayman Islands and some other overseas territories as an example. And we make a decision, we bring it to the House, and you have your readings, and then it is passed. So there's a whole process that must be done before you can just jump up and say it's in advanced stages. Now, when you hear this long process that I'm speaking about, when you hear advanced stages, you would think, okay, we have an independent auditor already identified, and terms of references and such are already completed. They are on their way to Anguilla. It will be done virtually. We're going to have meetings with the opposition soon. None of this has happened. And like sometimes you see certain arguments online, or you hear certain things being said, and you wonder to yourself, well, why make this an issue? You can say that we agree with this. We think it's something that we would have loved to do. You could have even said that we were anticipating to add it on our legislative agenda for next year. And so next year be brought to the House of Assembly for review. There's so many things that you could reasonably say. And instead of telling the truth, you come up with something that can be easily identified as a lie.
Easily identified as a lie. Easily identified as a lie, because Quincy, you explain it perfectly, because the reality is that it cannot be far advanced. It cannot be. But as I said before, I'm going to hold Shelley's word to her word. She says it's going to come well before December 31st, 2026. We give them sufficient time. Because if it was advanced, we would have seen it. Merrick is a man who peruse Executive Council minutes like a hawk, right? And at no point in time have we seen it reflected in Executive Council minutes. So how can it be far advanced?
Except Hayden, it really could have been under redacted.
Well, why would they redact something like that?
Why have they redacted a number of things?
But then Geneva, but listen to Neil. Neil is saying, hey, I am planning to put in writing my views as it relates to legislators' pension, right? And he also said that he believed that it should be repealed and replaced. So how can it be far advanced?
I'm gonna pull a U head and put a pin in there. And I think you are going to say the same thing, actually. So I'm sorry for cutting you off. But
that's okay.
If you are going to put something in writing to say that the whole bill should be repealed and replaced, and you are far, and your other colleague is saying that you're far ahead in advance in amendments, in the words of my honorable brother, Merrick Richardson, make sense. Right. How is that possible? That's not,
it's not possible.
That's not possible, because that means that you have not had your cabinet meetings as yet.
So how do people get fooled like this?
Well, he did say he was missing.
But even if he was missing, doesn't matter. The point is that he is putting it in writing And he is suggesting a repeal and replace while they are saying that the amendments are far advanced. No,
If
there's
you're
no drafting.
if you're early enough to suggest a repeal and replace, your amendments cannot be
Far advanced.
Well,
far
maybe
advanced.
they were far advanced in her research,
Maybe, but it cannot be far
not in the
advanced because
process. It may not have been
where
far advanced. And I am
okay.
trying to give the benefit.
Even if I could jump in, right? Even because Neil said he is aware of what's going on. That he makes sure come back to that 2-3 times that he's aware of what's going on, but he will still put his concerns in writing, and he's in favor of a repeal and replace. So again, how far advanced is it?
his?
Has it gone to like Quincy have asked a very important question? Has it gone to executive council? Is it in the HE chambers with the drafting unit? What is far advanced? That I think is the $1 million question.
And I also want to put on record, because this is not just for our conversation, this is for people listening so they can understand the process. Neil Rogers would be the most senior member of the team in terms of time served, and the person who will be most impacted by any decisions made for the contributions to the fund, because he was already receiving a pension because of his age and the fact that he had retired. So if you're telling me that your closely knit, well-organized United Front will be far advanced without having proper consultation with the one person that has already been receiving pension and will be most impacted by this decision, that would make a lot of sense to justify a lot of the nonsense that's been going on. A lot of the things that had us like, what? Now makes sense, because there's no organization. It's just a cold front.
A cold front. That.
Why lie about
the only cold front that we are the only cold front that we are feeling at this point.
You know, I want to come back. I want to come back to something you were saying earlier, Gleneva. I don't know where you were going with the question, but I think Hayden had answered something in between. But you were asking a question: how should we take elected officials at your ward, especially when they're on government side? And it's a conversation, a back and forth I've had in the House of Assembly with the Honorable Speaker. But even this week again, when we brought questions to the House, and we asked a question about the property in the UK, the property, if it has been identified. Now I can say in the Honorable House, Neil Rogers bragged about visiting the house, and he was through it up and down, and he said it's a lovely piece of property. The Honorable Single Island Wide member, Kyle, said they visited the house all the way back in November. He's in favor. I understand at the town hall meeting in the East End, the Honorable Premier made a presentation with pictures and everything of this same property. But when it comes to the Honorable House asking questions, because this have to be passed in the Honorable House, all of a sudden you can't give information because it's going to affect the cost and the negotiations. But on 3 different on 3 different occasions, persons within your administration have announced publicly the address of this. Everybody in Angola knows the address. But now that you have to answer the honest questions, you're not sure if this is a property. So you asked an important, I know it wasn't in relation to the house, but you asked a very important question. What can we take as the elected officials' words? Because when I had the back and forth with the Premier and the Speaker, it had to do with the Honorable Premier in many different forums saying they've ring-fenced $16 million. And then when I brought it up in the House, it was an issue. So if I can't take my ministers and my elected persons in the House and the parliamentarians, if I can't take their word for it, who word am I supposed to accept? Because if a minister said we ring-fenced $16 million, who am I supposed to believe? Who am I supposed to believe? And that's why I keep telling people, when we come on these forums, we as being a responsible opposition, and I'm not just talking about those of us who are elected, but we as an APM party, that's why we are responsible and give people factual information. We just don't be pulling things out of the air. And you can debate and you could say whether you like us or not, but what you can dispute is the facts. The facts are always facts. You could change up how you feel about us, but you obviously can't change the facts.
To that, Merrick, I think when I asked the question, it wasn't simply about taking them at their word outside of Parliament. But if someone says something in Parliament, it should hold weight. If it's a throwaway comment.
When they say it in Parliament, they still don't hold weight because.
But that's what I was getting at. Because if someone can say, well, that's just a throwaway comment on Facebook, that shouldn't hold weight. But if someone says a elected member in Parliament makes a statement, one should expect that there is nothing short of the truth. Not their truth, the truth. So, and to segue into where we're going to go next, when I believe there were questions brought by Hayden to the Minister of Infrastructure on ANGLEC and the Caracas Bay building, as a public, we were told that building will be completed and occupied by December 31st, 2025. We are now, almost 7 months past that date, and the building is still an open sepulcher, according to my grandma. That's the way that she would describe that, an open sepulcher. It's just an empty shell there, an eyesore. We are in the heat of hurricane season. We are heading towards the peak of. What is going to become of that property? Is it a liability? So
as they would say in first world nations, a white elephant.
Hayden didn't start it, so they don't know what to do.
It's a white elephant. You remember, Joseph Vanderpool said it was a prerequisite to getting renewable energy done.
Joseph Vanderpool also complained that you didn't start everything that he was going to continue. So
Jose don't want to do no work. It would seem so to me.
And so on the note, and so on the note of renewable energy, I am aware that it has been back in discussions again. I think there were some comments made by the minister.
You know, the thing is this, right? First and foremost, we got to remember that they said that they had a plan ready to go, that they'll be adopting ANGLEC's plan that is ready to roll out right away. They've been in office for well over a year. This so-called plan has not been rolled out as yet. Now, two things.
They thought you left a plan, Hayden.
Sorry?
They thought you left a plan.
Well, two substantive things happened. They placed Steve Hodge, Hotshot, and Peter Lamentang on suspension, and they sit there on suspension for well over a year. That to me is a travesty. And you know what is so hypocritical about all of this? Can you imagine if that had happened under the Angular Progressive Movement, what would have happened today? And I'm not knocking the CEO because I don't know the gentleman. I'm sure he's well qualified and what have you. But can you imagine a local CEO, Stockliffe Hodge, for example, being his contract expired and he's not renewed, and you bring in a CEO from overseas, and you bring in a CFO from overseas, and all of these things under the Angular Progressive Movement. Just imagine what would have been on the airwaves today, and the voice notes by the guy who thinks he knows everything, who lies incessantly. Remember when you were going to the House of Assembly to extend all the voting to certain areas, he said that we were going to the House of Assembly to pass legislation to give Barbara a pension. And just 2 days ago, I think it was 3 days ago, where he said that it's a government of Angola who's taking this motion to the House as it relates to legislators' contributions. You know, so just imagine these things. So we have, I think ANGLEC has an AGM that's coming up very shortly. And I saw a letter that was written by Harold Luan to the Honorable Premier, directed towards one of the boards, as Harold would say, the cardboard, right? But directed to the Honorable Premier. And we know that Cora Richardson Hodge, as Marvin Hanley said, is very quiet and does not do anything. So she's quietly leading. I don't know what that means. Where you have to pay journalists to make it look as if, yeah, you don't say nothing, yeah, you don't do nothing, but you're leading and you're being very well respected around the world. Man,
No
I
words.
am flabbergasted.
I,
I'll
I'm,
say the
I'm
country,
as,
the
I'm
country
as,
have gone sleep. Let me tell you how sleep the country have gone, right? That rain isn't even falling. The rain stopped falling. And if anybody doubt me that the rain stopped falling, look at this. Look at rainfall between 2020 and 2026. Look at it.
On a serious note, Hayden, you brought it up.
That's a serious note. That's a serious note.
Sorry to jump across your question, Geneva, and I think it's important for me to bring it up while I'm in the presence of Quincy, because we are obviously in the middle of a drought. Thank God I saw the fire department put out a notice about brush fires, and the danger of lighting your stream material at this time of the year. But I'm still waiting on our departments, our government heads to come out the same way. We were quick to say, hey, save on electricity. We have to be making a conscious effort to let our people know we are in a drought. Every other island around have spoken about it, because we're in the middle of El Nino. Always mixing them up. We're in the middle of Dubai. And anybody who even pay slight attention to what's going on, they know that we're going to be in for an extended drought period. Where are the notices coming out to say, hey, conserve water? Where are the notices to say there's going to be extreme heat, even more than we're accustomed to, that persons need to be a lot more careful, drink water, because we are accustomed of heat. We'll go out, be in the sun all day, we won't drink our water, we'll get dehydrated. But in some things, government just need to take the lead and let the people know, because there are many persons who are not aware that we are in the middle of a prolonged drought and an increased hot time. So I'm just going to use this opportunity while I have Quincy, because we know when it comes to anything about the environment and those things, that's like she said her the other day, her babies, But I think it's important for us to have a small little conversation at this time, because we know where all the leads and ideas come from. We don't have, but I just really think it's important while we have her here to get an input from her on that.
I will, and Quincy, before you go, because there is something else that I want you to address in that response to Merrick. In addition to being in a drought, our water situation.
Well, I was actually going to answer based on that.
Yes, because...
So, Merrick, you said that no one said anything, but I would have to disagree, because in the town hall in East End, Kyle Hodge, he was the opener of the presentations. And one of the priorities he said is that the government is going to take will be doing extra to lock all of the water areas that people are stealing waters from now. So they are ensuring that we have as little access to water as possible. And that's a priority. And I think at a time when we are in an affordability crisis as it relates to living, water, electricity, because electricity is a basic good at this point, you are saying in a town hall of government updates that you are so happy to announce that we're getting new locks and better locks for the water areas where persons might be stealing water. Now, I'm not encouraging anybody to steal water, but I also think read the room. We're in a drought. Persons may not necessarily be stealing water maliciously, but some persons may run out of water and just need basic water to do basic things around their house where they get access to the water trucks to the yards. You can do more investigation to kind of find out where people are at and find out what's going on. And I'm not saying that government should just allow the leakages to continue, because we already have significant leakages as it is. or to come up and say that we are very proud to announce that we have a new safety lock system to ensure you can get in the water for free is just exactly, it's a euphemism for what the Anglo United Front is at this time. And, you know, right now we are not only in a drought, we have suffocating heat from the Sahara dust, which is again exacerbated by climate change. And in this period, we always try not to get hurricanes, but the tropical waves and probably the tropical storms and such, when they are waterborne, like when they're more water than air, they are very good for our environment in terms of our water catchment and stuff, unless it's like significant salt in it, and we can get into more complicated conversations about that. But just the enhanced rainfall because of the tropical weather patterns that pass us, we are not benefiting from that. And they are talking about everything at this time and not how we will address the drought that we are in and how will we continue through this crisis of affording basic goods. Because in this heat and with this level of dust, like go outside in the night, take a flashlight and just look at the level of dust that's before your face, not even high up in the atmosphere, right in front of you. It's as if someone is taking a mat and shaking it in front of you. And you realize that at this time, people are saying turn off your ACs. Government officials are saying turn off your ACs. Don't consume as much at home. Turn off your fans. It's at the point where this is something that will significantly impact your health. Like, it is so hot. It is unbelievably hot. It is unbelievably dry. And people would do turning on your AC is a bare minimum. I'm sorry. In this level of heat that we're dealing with, it's a bare minimum. And I want to go back to your original point about Anglic, because I want to say it without mincing any words. I will not accept the excuse from the government of Anguilla that the continued payments for the electricity relief cannot be continued until renewable energy is done. And I'm going to expound on this. When the Anguilla Progressive Movement was in government, I came to the House of Assembly. I didn't say a throwaway comment. I didn't say it on a press conference. I said it in the House of Assembly that it is clear that we have met some level of impasse between the administration and the board and senior level officials of the Anglic. And if the opposition was patriotic, they would have tried to broker some sort of conversation between the government of Anguilla and the Anglic. I said this. Instead, they were parading a plan that the government of the day had not seen and were not being allowed to see, to put it frankly, on Class FM, in other media, and saying we have access to the plan and we believe that power should be 100% Anguilla owned, whatever that means. Because you still went out and get a loan from a source that is not 100% Anguilla owned. And we don't get oil from a hole somewhere in Birmingham. We bring oil in on a boat every so often, every X amount of days. So now, what is the principle of Anguilla ownership when people have to consider between buying food and keeping lights on? I'm not against it, but they were not presenting this plan of what Anguilla ownership actually looked like. And they did everything they could from the opposition bench to get
people riled up,
to disturb the process of going forward of PPA, including fabricating many lies, and some of that includes saying that there was ownership in the PPA by members of the Anguilla Progressive Movement. So after doing all of that, and to come in a year and a half and then saying that in 2028, 2029 is when we will be getting full renewable energy because of the plan that you have decided to go with, don't come to me, partner. Don't come to me saying no nonsense about we can't afford to continue paying the electricity bills. It's unsustainable. Unsustainable, my foot. Pay it until renewable energy get back in, because you are the reason why Angola does not have renewable energy to this day.
Yes, but
Because Caden can tell you better than I how much they frustrated the process and laughed at the government that they didn't have access to the plan. To whose
not only
benefit?
didn't have access to the plan, wasn't getting information, because remember during Resembid, Travis, who was heading up the Resembid program, he was begging for information, couldn't get information.
We almost lost critical
Ralph
policy
Hodge.
work.
Ralph
It
Hodge
was
was elected electricity commissioner. He was putting in writing for information and was not getting it and placing that on the record. The governors, both Delaney and Crouch, can verify that to be a fact.
Not only that, that Resembid program was €1 million.
And we were being embarrassed by it. We were being embarrassed by it.
There was just a flat out refusal to give us information on one hand, and the Angola United Front's opposition coming on radio to laugh at the people of Angola that the government of the day could not access the information to move forward with renewable energy. Don't come and tell me no nonsense about this is unsustainable. Find a way to make it sustainable. I
was just about to say that. How could it be unsustainable when you spend millions and millions of dollars on a house in London with ongoing costs? With ongoing costs. With
priorities.
Priorities. Costs that's going to be ongoing indefinitely. But you raised something about water, Quincy. I can tell you that there are literally hundreds of persons who are now applying for water and cannot get any connections.
Yes.
This is a fact.
Because
they cannot get any connection.
Underwater.
There's no action whatsoever as it relates to water. They are applying and they can't get any connections.
Yes.
None.
So and that's I'm glad you brought that up, Hayden, because that is what I was going to say, because I know personally persons who have been applying and have been told that they cannot get water. And so it's very frustrating that we are in a period of drought and your priority is to lock off from those who are stealing instead of making your priority ensuring that persons who want to access it can access it.
And even on the other hand,
sorry, man, 1 second, because it brings to mind a question: are those persons stealing because they want to have legal connections, and you lack the ability to do so? So we've now removed a basic need from persons. Where's your empathy? Where's your ability to put people first?
Where are the people? Because everybody getting left behind. Them in drought, them in darkness, and them who sell
and them in heat.
Them heads. Everybody getting left behind. Them who got a business, them who trying to buy groceries. Everybody. Let me tell you the track record of this government, because sometimes people think that it does be joking, but it's really frustration. I really, really, really feel like this is the worst thing ever happened to Angola. The first thing you do as an organization, a political organization, is to repeal the GST and bring forward a new tax on businesses. This is the first thing you do. The very first thing. When you were told that it makes much more sense to reduce the rate if your concern is affordability, but what you are proposing will increase prices, you got arrogant. You said people don't want to see GST. So they want it out of the door. So we are repealing the goods and services tax to bring in a general services tax on businesses, because that's what it is. The experts then told you, here are the figures. Here's how it will work. It will increase the cost of goods because persons are no longer getting the rebates element of the tax. So businesses can't say, well, we don't have to pass on this tax because we're going to get a refund. They're now saying we have to pay a new tax and we have to spread it across the goods, the cost of goods and services. Kyle Hodge, because they have a lot of surrogates that just go on the radio and come on Facebook and try to fight you down, but Kyle Hodge in his own words said, yes, businesses will have to pass on the price onto their goods, yes, but it's going to be a little a little increase. Nothing tall goes so. Everything had a substantial increase. And what is most important is that those goods, particularly those goods that were zero rated on February 1st, 2025 and January 1st, 2025, by December 31st, 2025, were increased in price, not because of the Ukraine crisis, not because of global inflation, because businesses had to pass on the increase. Imagine a bill that is supposed to assist persons with affordability. You have a minister in the person of Shelia Rogers-Webster going on to whatever media she decided to go on and telling persons, run. If you need to buy a refrigerator, if you need to buy a stove, run and buy it now. Well, there's no GST because there's going to be a GST when the stocks are replenished. So now that tells me that the country realistically had, let us say, a month of relief. You had restaurants carrying up the price of goods more than 13%. I know one of their biggest supporters who's always on Facebook, his restaurant carried up the price of a salad by 16%. GST was 13%, dear listener. That is the legacy of this administration, a legacy that believes in psychological advancement while people are left behind in reality. And we need responsible leaders. We need persons who respect the people of Anguilla, who will make the hard decision, who will take the time to explain to them the consequences of these decisions and do what is right for people and not do what is right for the optics. Because right now we have a showgirl government where they are doing what is good for optics and they're not considering the reality of the persons on the ground. They've destroyed the salary review process. They have destroyed the cost of living. They have such an amazing blunder with renewable energy. They don't listen. They don't listen.
They don't listen.
When it comes to renewable energy, we would have expressed that I personally have good connections with the Caribbean Development Bank. The Caribbean Development Bank is good. It has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. When you as a country, you are in a position to do your own, the Caribbean Development Bank is not the preferred partner for funding. There are a lot of things you can get from the Caribbean Development Bank, including technical support. But when it comes to funding, you must understand that because of the nature of the organization, it tends to move a little slower to ensure that the good governance metrics are met. If you want to provide immediate relief, you wouldn't waste time going to this Caribbean Development Bank, especially at a time when you are seeing a trend of exponential increases on your revenue heads under AI. And you can then make the determination, let us wait 4 months, let us wait 5 months, let us see what this trend leads us. And then you can then decide, we can make this happen with the ANGLEC from government funds. Instead, you come to the people after telling them to carpool and turn off their lights and turn off their air conditioning and switch to LED when the prices have increased by 40-something cents, the fuel surcharge prices. You come to them and tell them to do that. And then on top of that, tell them, don't worry, we're gonna go to the CDB and see if we can, we're gonna explore the options of seeing if we can get the panels in a smaller tranche so that we can try to gradually increase our renewable energies. I know I've been talking for a while, but let me just conclude by saying this. The only way that we will get a substantial difference in our experience in fuel surcharge is if we have enough panels, solar panels, or whatever renewable energy we use to take off one of the generators. So long as those generators are in operation, the price of fuel will be the same. We have people who do not understand the basics in the highest seat of government and then have the gall to be unwilling to learn and listen.
They don't listen. They don't listen. Meanwhile, Kyle is in the house saying, oh, don't be in here, grandson, and bring your ideas. But when we bring our ideas, what do? Reject it and tell us that it's, oh, look at the number. What is 8 to 3? It's a landslide. So
They
don't come
don't
to
just
us with
want
your
your
ideas.
ideas, Hayden. They want you to spell it out for them. Because when you tell them that this is, they don't know where to start. That is the problem. Give them, they want you to do the work for them. Quinta, there's a question that I have been mulling over, and I think maybe I saw something to the same effect recently. What happens, I think maybe it was Curtis, I stand to be corrected, but what happens if in the time that it takes for ANGLEC to fully install renewable energy, and the people who can move towards renewable energy themselves, what happens to ANGLEC?
Well,
What
nothing
happens
happens to
to
Anglec.
ANGLEC?
What I can say will happen is this. Those persons who are left consuming electricity from Anglec will have to pay a pretty penny. And it's quite possible that Anglec will have to be heavily subsidized by the government of Angola to remain afloat. It will go the way of the dinosaurs. That's
So
where Anglec,
basically, as
that's
I
why
said
Anglec pays
earlier,
today.
the generators cannot come off unless you have enough, if you have enough solar. So even with the smaller megawatts that they're planning on going with, if it's not going to take a generator offline, it's not going to really move the needle per se, especially at a time when you're adding a cost in repaying a loan. So let us just be realistic with the process. So let's imagine, I'm going to reduce the numbers just for understanding's sake. There are 100 of us on the ANGLEC grid. If 50 of us come off the grid, the remaining 50 will still have to pay for the operation of the ANGLEC. That might be staff, operating costs, and we getting new vehicles to ensure that they can be mobilized. That might be just maintenance on the lines. That would be fuel. All of these things are included in the ANGLEC's operating costs. Those things remain the same regardless of consumption. Because you might say, well, they can let people go, and we don't want that to be a reality either. But even if they do, the plant will still need a certain level of people operating there. So letting go of 5 people is not going to make a difference to the ultimate bottom line. Right. And what will happen is that the 50 persons remaining have to pay for all of that. Now, if you spread that cost, let's say the cost to operate that version of ANGLEC is $100. And so when there were 100 people, every person would have to pay $1 to make sure that the ANGLEC is profitable and runs in a way that it can be operationalized. And then 50 persons leave, it means that the remaining 50 persons now have to pay $2.
Right.
And so now their electricity bill goes up by 100%. Because the cost to operate remains the same regardless of unless there's like enough people that leaves that we can just take off some generators off the grid, which I doubt that would be the case. It would be a scenario where the ANGLEC will have to do what it needs to do to survive. And my hope is that the ANGLEC continues as an operation to be a successful one, is sustainable, that the persons employed there get the opportunity to expand their expertise, and a lot of them actually are very good with renewable energies on their own anyway. So I'm sure if and when that is properly introduced to the company's organization, that they are well equipped to support the transition. And so I wish the best for the ANGLEC. I really, really do. As an organization, it is our most critical organization. It needs to be preserved. It needs to be treated with respect. Yes. And it needs to be handled with care. And quite honestly, I would say many boards ago, we have lost the necessary level of care that the ANGLEC needs to be sustainable. And I say that without any reservation. But what is happening now is that the Anguilla United Front's behavior and decision-making is putting unnecessary pressure on the organization. This is where we're at. Outside of the fact that we have, wars across the globe, we have rising price of energy, the ANGLEC as an organization has enough to contend with without an incompetent government doing nonsense to it and holding it back from being able to reach its full potential. And we are here right now at the mercy of a very incompetent government.
But if you think about it though, Quincy, this Angular United Front is the ones who continue to destroy ANGLEC. If you case in point, under the Angular United Front NI administration, right, they outsourced ANGLEC altogether, right? When Hubert Hughes became Chief Minister of Angola, he was able to bring back ANGLEC 100% ownership by the government of Angola. The Angola United Front came to office in 2000 following that, and then they divested of a significant number of shares of ANGLEC again, right? Creating a board and creating all of these problems. But I must say that before that, there was a 3-man board appointed by the government just to, but anyway, that's what that happened. And then the government of Angola, the Angola United Front again, tried to divest of government shares again. Back in 2017, they offered a share offering. And through the God intervened and brought Hurricane Irma, and it was thwarted for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then they decided they were going to move forward in selling ANGLEC shares to meet a shortfall in government's budgetary process. So basically, you'd have done that, the money would have been exhausted, you'd have lost ANGLEC, no control over ANGLEC whatsoever, a real basket case. Now, Harold Rwan stood up, a 2-man fight basically. He and another colleague who was on the board at the time, he was able to block ANGLEC from doing, the government of Angola, sorry, the United Front administration from doing irreparable damage to ANGLEC. All right. Now they're back in office again, about to do damage to ANGLEC. They have always damaged that entity. Because when I hear people saying, oh, you should have sell the whole entity to private investors. Meanwhile, the same people will ask about other things in Angola remaining under Angolan control and remaining in Angola's hands. The best place for ANGLEC is to be owned by the government of Angola. The best place. That's where ANGLEC should be. That's a home for ANGLEC. Because if that was the case from before, government of Angola would have already had renewable energy, because we had tons of people broken down our doors about renewable energy. I've been in several meetings with several investors who have come to our shows, and at every juncture, both Dr. Webster and I have said to them, we cannot give it to you, no matter how qualified you are, no matter what you have had, because it must go through a public procurement process. It must go through an open and transparent tender where the political director will have no hands on it. We've told everybody that. And I've had some of the biggest firms come to Angola about renewable energy integration. And I'm telling you something, if it is that ANGLEC wasn't obstructionist, if there wasn't obstructionists around during that time, today we'd have been paying 15, 20 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. It would have been the cheapest electricity in the entire region.
That's why I say I don't accept the government trying to soft launch.
Without any fuel surcharge.
They're trying to soft launch the fact that they're not going to continue paying this. And I'm saying the fact that we are in a place where we're at a crisis, it's your fault. It's your fault. And you cannot ask the people to pay for your incompetency. It was your incompetence and your political greed that led us to this point. Make sure that whatever you do with the expenses of government, that until there's renewable energy in this country, the bills are subsidized. Because I think it would be unfair. I mean, let's be real about it. It would be unfair to expect persons to pay this bill, not only because the Angola United Front frustrated the process to ensure that we couldn't get where we needed to go, but also we heard the outcries when the first bills were released. People will have to not just come off the grid and go to solar. That's a good version of events.
Right. Yes.
They would have to turn their lights off. I want you to imagine an Anguilla, because salaries aren't increasing. The economy is
at least
not
not in
performing
July.
at a level that it should be. Where are we going to get the money to pay this bill? Those persons who can transition, kudos to you. You can save, you can do what you need to do to transition. Those persons who cannot will have to decide food or lights, and what kinds of foods. And we're actually in a situation where we're dealing with persons with NCDs and chronic illnesses and such. And now you're sending them to go and live off of canned foods because they can't use their refrigerators.
But Quincy, something that was raised recently, and it was verified on Radio Anguilla, the only real source of information at this point in time, solid information. Keystone Graves reported recently that Aurora is going to be 75% off grid, right? 75% off grid represents a total of some $800,000 a month. If you think that I'm talking US dollars, I'm not talking EC dollars, 800,000 US dollars. Let me pull out my calculator quickly and calculate that. 800,000 US dollars a month times 12. That's over 25 million a year. That's almost 70 million EC dollars a year that Angler cannot rely on. And then you have to consider 4 seasons moving forward. You have Zemi Beach, right? You have Frangipani. I'm just talking about the companies that are going to be moving towards renewable energy. I don't know about Malihana. I don't know about Malihana is yet, but I know there's a number of other entities in Anguilla that are going heavily into renewable energy. As a matter of fact, there are vendors in Anguilla right now that are selling complete solar plants, industrial size solar plants. Right now in Anguilla, from the small up to the big, you have you have Don Bromley, you have Mings, you have Chris Mason, and then there's a new company I saw with a black truck. I forgot the name of it, right?
Green Limited.
So you have, sorry?
Green Limited.
Green Limited. You have all of these companies. You have Myron Connor. You have all of these companies that are selling significant plants in the island. So you're going to see a situation where very few large entities are going to be left on the grid, and only the little man is going to be left on the grid. And this should be concerning to Anglic. And I remember having a meeting, right? And I know this is going to be refuted, and I'm running a risk here. But there was a meeting at infrastructure that I attended where Sir Cliff Hodge, when he was the CEO of Anglic, was there. And we were having a conversation about renewable energy. There was some sort of consultant on the island. And I was saying to him, I am completely off grid. I'm sitting right now in a room a house that is totally off Anglic grid, never been on Anglic grid. And I said, there are a lot of people who are going to be doing that. And he said, that's a good thing. He's happy to see that, right? And I was kind of confused because, to my mind, the more people come off Anglic's grid, the less importance Anglic have as an electricity provider to the people of Anguilla. So I was concerned about that, but I didn't say anything. He stopped me when he said that. I didn't know if that was a psychological move or play, but after that, I was taken aback and I just ceased to speak. But the reality is that it's very troubling. That is troubling. And the fact that so many people right now in this drought are begging for water line from the government of Anguilla, clamoring for water lines and cannot get on it. Government's water is really troubling. And I heard Kyle Hodge in the House of Assembly saying that how someone called him and talk about how great the pressure was and how the water is so great and so forth. But then if that's the case where you got hundreds of people who can't get on water, who begging to get on water.
And you also have people who
morning.
are on water not getting water.
Right. And every single morning I wake up early in the morning. And from before 5 o'clock in the morning, the water trucks are running. I'm serious. Before 5 o'clock in the morning, the water trucks are running. Sorry?
And just had to get some water today.
I was about to ask if you hear the water truck outside my house right now.
Because that is why I say I don't understand this whole, we need to keep Anglic 100% Anguilla owned. Let me ask you, and Anglec is owned how much percent by the government of Anguilla?
If you look at it totally, it's what, 73%? If you consider
And the
NCBA.
rest, okay, and the rest 27% is who?
It's people like Sutcliffe Hodge
Anguillians.
But no, but
Anguillians.
like individual Anguillians, right?
Anguillians.
Right.
So how would Anglec having to do a PPA would make it less Anguillian owned? This is the most confusing argument.
If you're a PPA, power purchase agreement, as a matter of fact, I will give David Carter the credit because he was the first person to suggest that the fastest way and the best way for Anglec to move forward with renewable energy integration is to enter the PPA, power purchase agreement. Now, the United Front continues over the years to play on the ignorance of us as the people of Anguilla, because they are claiming they're giving away Anglec if you enter in the power purchase agreement. But remember, Anglec is a distributor of electricity. Anglec doesn't create fuel. Anglec don't have a oil mine somewhere around that they're extracting fuel. They taking the fuel, they're processing the fuel, and then they're using it in the generators. They are purchasing fuel to be used in the generation, and then they are selling the electricity onto the consumer. Enter into a PPA will be replacing the fuel, which is the diesel, with solar. That's the only difference. So the Anglec will be still.
I think that's important to kind of break down again so that people understand it, because I know the PPA was demonized for political reasons. And I think it's important to break down that the PPA, the only thing that would have done is to replace purchasing diesel with purchasing electricity generated from solar. So all you were doing was changing the source that you were purchasing from, right?
Not only changing the source that you're purchasing from, changing the costs.
But yes, because it's no longer volatile.
And by having it being owned by a entity outside of Anglec, you reduce the risk to Anglec. Anglec's risk is reduced significantly because we know that under the Anguilla Progressive Movement AUM administration, we were moving forward with a 1 megawatt renewable energy plan, which was commissioned under the Anguilla United Front. And on September the 6th of 2017, it was destroyed by Hurricane Irma. And when it was destroyed, it was never reinstated, right? So Anglec held that risk, government of Anguilla, Anglec held that risk of having that 1 megawatt plan. And what we do know is that that 1 megawatt plan consumes a significant amount of land space. Now, under the Anguilla Progressive Movement, Courtney Morton, he had already identified basically all of the different areas and lands that would have been used for Anglec's renewable energy integration plan, because not Anglec's, sorry, Government of Anguilla's renewable energy integration plan through the power purchase agreement. Because what we had envisioned is not only utilizing all of government's assets in terms of the roofs at the hospital. So the hospital would have gone completely off-grid. And that was something that was of urgent, paramount importance to us, that we are moving forward with moving the hospital, not necessarily total off-grid, but a type of supplement significantly with renewable energy because of their cost. That would have been one of the first priorities. But then all of the buildings, the combined services building at the airport, the terminal building, the Blowing Prairie Ferry Terminal, the schools, all of government assets plus the land would have been utilized across the island, would have been utilized for the solar plants, because then what would have been done is that you would, even if there's cloud cover in one area, you will always have energy generation. Another aspect that we are looking at as well that would have been formulated as part of the power purchase agreement for the request for proposal and the tender, which is the procurement process, was waste to energy. Because what we envision is that we were going to reclaim the land in Carito, clean up Carito altogether, and stop expanding Carito. So that Carito landfill would have been cleaned up, and all of the waste, sorry?
And used for solar.
And right, and so forth. So these are the type of things that we wanted to do, but like I said, there was a lot of obstructionists, and they had the power to obstruct. I mean, at one point in time, they were even talking about load shedding. an illegal activity. It was illegal because the Electricity Act does not allow you to load shed unless there's issues with the grid. You cannot load shed because you haven't challenges purchasing fuel. Yeah, the only way you can load shed under the present Electricity Act is through issues with the grid itself. And another thing that is troubling that a lot of people have not raised is that I believe Kyle Hodge, but for sure Joseph Van der Poel said in Parliament that the government of Angola is going to be paying Anglic some significant sum in terms of streetlights and addressing the legislation. Now, that is an issue that came up when we were in office. We raised that concern because Anglic, under the Electricity Act, there's a quantum that you pay for solar lights. I believe it's $100 and something thousand or what have you. There's a quantum that you pay for streetlights, sorry. And government of Angola is paying way above what it was supposed to be paid. So Anglic needed to reimburse government of Angola somewhere in the region, I believe it was about $33 million, right? And so I heard Jose saying, well, we're going to pay them that and we're going to address the legislation. Yes, addressing legislation is fine. But if Anglic owes government money, then Anglic should pay government money because, you know, when we came into office, Quincy, you know, the Water Corporation of Angola owed Anglic in excess of $10 million. And that became a huge issue under the Pat Martin Borough Board to the point where they cut water off.
I know that very well. I know that very well, Hayden.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that you was the chair of the board. And you know, and the thing is that we had came up with a proposal approved by Executive Council to pay, I believe, $1 million up front, and then to keep all of the bills current as we pay down on the existing bill. That was a plan that was agreed in the Executive Council and was rejected by Anglic. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're certainly right on that.
These are all the reasons why I'm saying that this whole talk about, hey, just so you know, we won't be paying this indefinitely. You know, the government can't afford to continue paying this indefinitely. You will be. You will be, because you agitated. Y'all remember when Anglican was claiming that government owed it some sort of millions of dollars, and every time the opposition would get on a radio show or in the house, they would say, go and pay Anglic, go pay Anglic, go pay Anglic. But now that the government, and no, first of all, they have not done that, one. And two, none of the government has the wherewithal to invest in Anglic. They're doing all kind of nonsense. So you see when Shelia say, oh, the only thing they have to talk about is the UK House. That's not it. But the UK House is the most glaring example of misplaced priorities. And it is so easy to look at everything that needs to be done in this country and put it right back at the UK House, because we are saying right now we're having a conversation, a national conversation about the sustainability of electricity and not provision, but the affordability of electricity. And you are saying we can't continue to subsidize your electricity in the same time saying we're going to spend millions of dollars in a house that is not necessary, because we believe the constitutional reform would allow for us to do overseas voting, and we have to prepare the house before it's time. Let's be real. That's the focus of the conversation right now. The conversation we are having on Anguilla is, will I be able to afford electricity and food when the government decides to pull the plug on the subsidies? And the conversation our government is having is, can we buy a $16 million house? Remember, they cut the price. It's only a part payment what's happening right now. A $16 million house in the UK, so we can make it easier for Anguillians living abroad to vote for us in the next election. That is what is happening to, I want the people of, I'm going to repeat that again. We are having the national conversation that was introduced to us by our government saying, we do not know how long we can pay or subsidize your electricity bills. And so the collective concern is, can I keep my lights on and pay and have food to buy, have money to buy food? Can I keep my lights on and have money to buy food? And the conversation that our government is having is, can we spend $16 million in the UK to facilitate overseas votes? Because we anticipate that the constitutional change will yield a provision for overseas voting.
But Quincy, you know when you keep saying that the government is saying this is not sustainable. Part of the reason is that government has already shown the fact that they had to increase the budget because there's a $50 million increase in the budget. And I keep speaking about it and people seem to be missing that point, but there's a $15 million increase when they brought the supplementary budget to the House a couple of weeks ago. And that $15 million is to cover the relief measures. And I keep asking the questions because you know and Hayden know, when we did relief measures, it came from savings. It came from that you realized there was extra monies. But if you have to go and increase the budget by $15 million, that is saying to me, the other side, we are not doing well in a lot of our other line items. That AI, of course, we're getting, and and again, it's something that I think we as the opposition have to take some blows for and some blame for, because we wanted to make sure that public servants receive their salaries on time. So we went along, but we got a supplementary budget and we did not get the corresponding figures from the other side to say, hey, we're going to increase the budget, but what about the other side? You know, we are spending out more because we increased the budget by $15 million and they showed nothing on the other side to say how this would be balanced. We were taking it about thoughts and prayers and on how this increase would be covered. Because if anybody remember, there was a $75 million shortfall in the budget that was passed in 2026. Yes, it may be covered by that AI, but there was already a $75 million shortfall. We are adding another $15 million to it, and we, the members of the opposition, have not seen the corresponding data to say, hey, these other line items are doing so well, other than that AI, that you guys have nothing to worry about. Those are the things that when people say government of Angola, that this administration, they front the spend and waste money, these are the things that is sneaking amongst people. And their flag wavers, card carrying members, they're not going to have that conversation. Tomorrow they'll have the conversation and say, oh, why are they talking about Anglic when they wanted to do the PPA? We bring information to the people of Angola. And you made a point earlier, Quincia, that it's something that I have been wrestling with for quite a long time. And how do we educate the people of Angola? Don't take away the blue, take away the yellow. How do we get people to see the information that is right there glaring in your face and not be lost in the information? I don't take crazy information when the other side brings this crazy information and you just walk with it. I mean, I had an argument back and forth when it was obvious in the House of Assembly, when it was obvious that the budget increased by $15 million. And I had members on the other side telling me it did not increase, till I was doubting myself. I was like, okay, I have to be going crazy, because if I am seeing something gone from 1 to 2, that's an increase, and you're telling me I'm not seeing an increase, then what about the other thousands of Anguillians who daily are not paying attention to the budget? I'll go one further. I brought a question to the House on the track and field facility, because we know, me and Hayden, all of us know, no money was provided in the budget for it. And the member got up and said there's $1.5 million in the capital budget. Yes, there's $1.5 million, but 700,000 of that dollars was for the Blind Point basketball court. So I suspect, Hayden, sad news, I don't think your court is going to get finished, because according to what was said in the House, they're going to take that $700,000 for that. There was $400,000 to complete the cricket stadium, the cricket dressing rooms and stuff at the James Ronald Webster Park, something we push hard to get when England donated part of that money from the fundraiser. Government had 400,000. So maybe the cricketers, sorry to apologize to you, we won't be getting those facilities. I know, thankfully, in my district, they've already started the wall around the playing field, so that have to be completed. So that might not, and that was another 400,000. So the $1.5 million that they got up and would announce that is there for capital to walk towards the track and field facility. It's really and truly, it's not there. It's already budgeted for other items. And this is why I keep saying, we keep getting fooled as a people when these people say, they love us. They love us. It's all about you. But every time I turn around and look, I cannot see how they really care for the people of Anguilla. Because if you cared for the people of Anguilla months and months and months ago, and again to Hayden's point, when the Honorable Single Island White member, the Minister for Economic Development, get up and say, we're not bringing in the plans. In the budget process, we said to them, you don't have any monies for the track and field facility. The track and field facility, we know we're going to be getting it. We know it's on its way. Please put something in the budget for it. It's not too late. They totally ignored it. Now they're rushing around and want to fool the people that there's $1.5 million to help. Oh, they haven't gotten the land yet. They haven't gotten the land yet, but in the House of Assembly, they want to tell me they have outline planning permission. They haven't gotten the land yet, but they have designs. Like how are you going to get planning permission when you're in a previous press conference just a couple of days before say that you don't have it? But so I know we're getting probably close after, but I just needed to get that in because it's so important for people to pay attention for themselves. Don't take our word for it. Don't take their word. The information is there. Please pay attention. And all of us have good God common sense, man. We have the common sense and we can separate the stuff from the BS. We can. And it's about time we really start as a people paying attention, just paying attention to the information that you're getting. And that's my plea because I know the information we get from this side is the information to help Anguilla. The other side, I'll leave that to somebody.
No, but Mary, you absolutely tell people, even when I had a radio talk show, I would try as much as possible to educate people on the processes of government, how government operated. And even I remember some years ago, when the United Front was in office and they were going through the budgetary debate, and Curtis Richardson got up and he asked for $1, a $1 line item in the capital budget because it was zero. He said just a dollar, and then we can work the rest. I can find the rest and so forth. And I even went on to explain why that $1 item was being requested by Curtis Richardson. And then you listen to Shelley Randers Webster when we were requesting a dollar line item for the Lansing Bowl Cultural Center. And I said to myself, Shelley knows better. I know she knows better because she worked in public service for a pretty long time. She worked in private sector and she also worked in the Anguilla Tourist Board as the head honcho for quite some time on the management of corporate affairs. And I said, why is it that these people always try to misinform? And then the supporters are like, yeah, that makes sense. I remember right after the election, right immediately after the election, I had occasion to sit at a bar by Mirabelle's. And there was a gentleman there who went all out supporting the front. So I said to him, he said to me, congratulations. And I said, for what? He said, you won. I said, no, you won. He said, oh, you figure? I said, well, your party won. So you won, I lost. He said, well, it's, yeah, I understand that. So I said, I need to understand this because you're a businessman. You did very well under our administration. Why is it you supported the Anguilla United Front over us? And he said he agreed with the Anguilla United Front that we should not use our funds for the development of the airport. That we should borrow some money. I'll go and find a partner to develop the airport. And he voted on that issue. So he said, that's the issue. I said, well, I guess time will tell whether the United Front abandoned the development of the airport or they seek and did what you say they say what they would do. Lo and behold, some months ago, Kyle Hart was being interviewed. He was asked the question about how they're going to go forward with the airport development. And he said, government funds. You understand what I'm saying? All of the things that they said before they got elected, they now abandoned. I want to give you another example, American Quincy. You remember the big noise that the Anguilla United Front made over the increased rates at ASPA and the increased rates for health? Do you know who is the chairman of ASPA right now? The one Fritz Smith. Do you know what Fritz Smith role is with the United Front? He's the chairman of the Angular United Front. Do you know who else is on the ASPA board? The visionless one from North Hill, Devan Karte. He's also on the ASPA board. Two of those significant players of the Anguilla United Front is now on ASPA board. And do you think they have made any efforts along with the government of Anguilla to reduce the same fees that they say were crippling to the people of Anguilla? Do you think that they have, under the health authority, not the health authority, the Department of Health Services, look to reduce the rates in health? Have they done it? No, they haven't. So people of Anguilla need to understand that this Anguilla United Front will do anything and say anything to get elected. Once they get elected, to hell with you. To hell with you. And that is why you have persons like Harold Wan and all of these people out there saying, hey, we got caught up in the yellow, and we did not think logically. And we made an error, a grave error. And this is a big error that needs to be remedied. And at least they have that the ability and to be able to say, you know what, I made a mistake and I'm going to right my mistake. You know, how many more people are silently saying, boy, we've been given a 6 for a 9 here with this Anguilla United Front. Thousands of people in Anguilla, thousands, all of the things that they said they would do. The only things that they have fulfilled in terms of the promise is the priority that I've made for tourism. Because remember, Kora said we need to diversify totally away from tourism. So if you're going to diversify totally away from tourism, what have you done to diversify even within tourism at this point in time? Nothing. You have taken the island from number 1 to number 9. That's one. Secondly, you said that you will that the island was moving too fast. You remember what's a rush? That's all the promise that they have fulfilled. They have fulfilled the promise in slowing the island right down to a sleeping motion. Because that's what has happened. Joseph Van de Poel got up in the house and said, is it a case of doing too much too fast? They have gone out and hired BCQS, a company that was done at not the same name, but some of the same principles was done at Catjaluca. And when they left, a lot of people in Anguilla were not paid, and they went out and hired that company to manage government of Anguilla's capital projects. Suppose we had done something like that. You know what's managing government of Anguilla's capital projects? A fellow named Hayden Hughes. And listen to this. But the first thing they get in government, they started bashing Dart, and the government of Anguilla had a 28-page report done up saying that I was too involved in the development of these projects. Hey, I was elected. So as an elected person, I will be involved. And even though I am not in government, I have been very involved in the road, the Patience Gums Road that leads from the South Hill to Jeremiah Gums Highway. I have been very involved in that because I believe if I was not involved, the road couldn't be done, even at this stage. And I'm asking them to remove the median on the Jeremiah Gums Highway. Listen, another thing before some others jump in, right? They were making noise about the medians in the Valley Main Road. So much so that some of them wrote to the governor to get the governor to get us to remove the medians in the Valley Main Road. They were very critical about the strip. And I said, listen, we wanted to develop the strip. We had a conceptual plan for the strip. We got one from Vanya Harrigan. We got one from Marlins, Van Bon Brooks, because the strip land was owned by ASITCO, the Anguilla Social Security Development arm of thing. It was owned by them. So we were actually meeting with ASITCO to come up with a concept to redevelop the strip to make sure that it's beautiful and reflective of our tourism product. Well, as I said, time ran out, you know. But just imagine, Mary, Quincy, if we had gotten 2 terms, the United Front have had several times over. If we had gotten 2 consecutive terms, where this island would have been today. The marina that they're jumping up on, well, Cardell always on there. And the reason why Cardell always down there is because he has interest down there in terms of heavy equipment down there. You think that could have happened under the Anguilla Progressive Movement? Hey, I don't have no interest in equipment. I don't own the equipment. My brother has an equipment company. And they had a lot to say if he was doing any work. But Cardell Richardson was elected by the people. can do that in not a word. Silence. And I'm saying it because of fact. We all see him. We know it to be a fact. But not a word. Not a word. Man.
I think that
Go ahead, Quintil.
I think that when it comes to the Angola United Front and the way that they govern, or the lack of governance, we have to start from the origin, not necessarily the party, leave that for Hayden to do, but the rhetoric leading up to the 2025 election. And my takeaway is that we cannot expect patriotic leadership from people who are elected on unpatriotic rhetoric.
Say it again.
We cannot expect patriotic leadership from persons who are elected on unpatriotic rhetoric. If you look across the region, and the region is very limited, if you look at small island developing states, when it comes to their infrastructure, you will see that Angola sits in the minority of countries that has full ownership of its infrastructure. We redeveloped roads, we built schools, we built airports, we built seaports. You know, we've done so much infrastructurally, and we don't owe anyone a cent. That is right to the heart of what it means to be Anguillian. Ownership is Anguillian story. We own our land. Some people have opinions and maybe we're selling out too much and maybe we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that, but the story of Anguilla is ownership by the people. And what a patriotic thing it is for our government, our people, to be able to own our own development. It means that we are not putting a noose around the neck of future generations of Anguilla to develop Anguilla by way of loans and other predatory means. It means then that instead of redirecting money into interest, we can instead redirect money into our people. There was a year when we were working actively to reduce the level of debt Anguilla was paying, and the opposition was saying, Anguilla, we don't need to focus on that.
And we need to increase our debt by borrowing.
I did the maths with the PS at the time. Actually, it would be this PS right now. She would have been deputy. And Anguilla was paying $19 million a year in interest for loans for the banking resolution. $19 million a year. At the time, in interest alone, which means that we still had to pay more for the actual loan repayments. At a time where we did not have the milk and honey from AI, we were paying $19 million a year.
And that had nothing to do with principle.
That had nothing to do with critical development. And I'm not just talking about infrastructure. I'm talking about development of critical school infrastructure, school programs, sports programs, more green spaces around the country, road development. I mean, we can go on. There's a lot the country can do with 19 million. Because we go to 16 million another man country for a building. So there's a lot a country can do with 19 million. When you pay a loan, it's not simply a matter of paying it back. It's paying it back and in interest. And when you pay a loan in government, the opportunity cost is paying it back with interest versus developing your people in more meaningful ways. And if an organization running for elected governments can convince you that it is better to spend excess money to an organization somewhere outside of Anguilla and repaying them interest instead of redirecting it into developing ourselves, you must understand that the nature of this organization is deeply unpatriotic at heart, because Anguillian ownership is not a priority for such an organization. And so when we see them trying to develop outside of Anguilla, making these decisions that clearly show that they're not putting the people of and in Anguilla first, when they're not making wise decisions on how we should transition to renewables and what we should do for our country, you pause and you ask, what reasonable government will do this? And my response to you will be a resounding response of only an unpatriotic government can. Only a member of an unpatriotic government will say, well, I heard that the APM only have this London house to talk about, so who cares? Only an unpatriotic premier will say, well, I'm not getting anything out of giving you subsidies, but I can get a house that you will not see the inside of, and think that that would make sense. Only an unpatriotic person will say that he is happy to announce that he's shutting off access to water to anybody who dares to try to get any water illegally as a key achievement of his ministry. Only an unpatriotic government will slow down development. A country that was hailed to be one of the fastest development without a crisis. Because in crisis, you have to develop quickly to get back to where you were. So after Irma, we have to do a lot to make sure we get back our infrastructure. But we had no immediate infrastructural crisis, but still Anguilla was amongst the fastest in the ECCU, the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union.
Not amongst the fastest growing.
The fastest growing, without crisis. That's a very important asterisk. It meant that our economy was moving in such a way that we could develop and contribute and invest in ourselves. And this administration, while in opposition, demonized that. They demonized the Valley Main Road. They demonized Senior Shield. They demonized the school lunch program. They demonized Anguilla getting a $5 million building for little to no money. They demonize it up to now. They demonize individuals investing in our sports and development by leaving the equipment down in Island Harbor to rot, and then to add insult to injury, going to Blowing Point, driving with their bulldozers and breaking down the building with no replacement plan in sight. Isn't that the actions of a deeply unpatriotic set of people? Who would do that to a country they love? If you felt that the Blowing Point facility was not up to standard, build another. Build another. If you felt that Isla Harbor was not up to standard, it wasn't built as yet, so add on what you can and use what you have.
I have a question.
I know you want to come in here. Go ahead.
What happened to the land that you are securing for farming in Blowing Point?
Left in the tumbleweeds of good decisions.
All right.
Dried by the drought of unpatriotism.
Okay. And this is a fact. This isn't something I made up.
Bad decisions.
They have
Marie had already identified. It was 10 acres, isn't it? It was 10 acres, isn't it?
And I, as a young Anguillian, am deeply disappointed because I want to tell you this story. After we lost the election, a gentleman called me and said he is so concerned about where Anguilla will go under the Anguilla United Front. I said to him, as much as it hurts to lose, I mean, it hurts to lose. I believe that this administration can carry on the dream of progress. I said, one, there's a lot of things in tow. And so they don't really have to even come up with new ideas for the first 2 or 3 years. A lot of things that they can just move ahead with. And while those things are moving ahead, they can come up with their last few years or their last 2 years of work plans. I also said that they're young, brilliant people on that side. And so I believe that they will be able to bring Anguilla keep Anguilla on the track that it's on. And that gentleman said to me, this is youthful idealism. Because to understand the heart of my comment is to understand the history of the Anguilla United Front. They will break everything. Those were his words to me. We are less than a year and a half in, and it is beyond me how this administration that was handed the best hand in the history of Anguilla's political history. Hayden is off the screen, but he is within earshot. He can tell you the history of Anguilla's development. We're gonna do it tonight because we run a little late, but the story is that this administration would have been handed the best hand in the history of Anguilla's politics, and still are behaving like people who don't know how to sit down and settle in and do the work. There wasn't much for them to do. They paused to measure twice and did not, in fact, measure at all.
We still can't get to cotton once.
And everything they touch, they destroy. And the people of Anguilla, including those who voted for them, because they were told by the Anguilla United Front that they will continue on the gains of the APM. So those persons believed in the dream of continued progress. Only a deeply unpatriotic government can be so careless, can have so much neglect, who can be so greedy and selfish and out of touch with the people, can do what the Anguilla United Front is doing to the people of Anguilla now. And the people of Anguilla do not deserve to deal with this nonsense today. Not after we had to jump up and pull up our bootstraps and pay GST in spite of not wanting to do it because of the Anguilla United Front. Not after, as a country, we made repeated sacrifices in development of our people because of the Anguilla United Front. We have paid the cost of their bad decisions. And then the one thing the Anguilla United Front had to do is continue on the gains and continue the progress. And they dropped the ball, and I have no confidence in their ability to pick it up. None. Name one thing that they have done that was not work begun by the APM.
Because even the Water Authority building or the Water Corporation building that was initiated under the APM. And I remind them all the time. But you know something that I find fascinating? Ivan Kana was named as the chairman of the Anguilla Summer Festival Committee. Let me tell you something. Whatever lenses you want to look through, Ivan Kana did a tremendous job under the biggest criticisms you could ever find in the history of Anguilla. He was able to secure meaningful partnerships, meaningful sponsorships. The marketing around Carnival 2024 was unprecedented. They had never had anything like it before. Deanne, Kentish Rogers, and Ivan was on every media outlet you can think about. Crispin Brooks was also working with them on the marketing and what have you. It was well promoted. Ivan Kana was also able to secure a full ride, a scholarship for the Miss Teenage. He was able to secure a brand new car for the Calypso Monarch. He was able to secure a brand new car for the Carnival Queen. He was able to secure a brand new car to be raffled. He was able to do all of that. Massive criticism. He couldn't do nothing right. And he kept his head down, his locks flowing, and he got the job done and did a tremendous job. We are literally weeks away from Carnival, no, days away from Carnival. And I don't have no doubt that the people of Anguilla will make Carnival great. But There's no marketing. They say, oh, they're going to the ports, they're going to be giving out drinks and what have you. But those are people already coming to Anguilla. But you have to market the summer festival, market the country so that people book Anguilla as a destination of choice. Because Antigua's out there heavily marketing, Barbados is out there heavily marketing, and both of those carnivals are around the same time that Anguilla Summer Festival is.
You know, Hayden, I think, and not to cut you off, but we will have an opportunity to touch Carnival when Carnival is through. I think I'm certain everybody here can see that we want to see Anguilla Summer Festival be the best summer festival ever. Every year you want to see it be better than the next. And likewise, and Hayden, I know you touched on it earlier. I'm segueing a bit because I want to go back. We want to see the most patriotic thing for us as Anguillas and outside of ownership, as Quincy has said. And I think it still ties into ownership. But we really own tourism in terms of where we go. And I know a lot of persons were very saddened that Anguilla's our ranking in that particular poll, that we moved from number 1 to number 9. And you touched on it, but I want us to be able to, in our final moments.
You notice Grenada moved from number 12 to number 2.
See, Stacy. I saw her. I mean, I saw her in the promo as they were announcing that, and so congratulations to them. Congratulations to Dominica.
But you know something, though.
Capturing number 1.
You know something, though, Gleneva. The reality is this, right? There's so much social media surrounding Anguilla and Savvy and day trippers that Anguilla is being talked about everywhere. You know what I mean? Just recently, the rankings came out on World's Best Beaches. We are right up there. You know what I mean? So we have all of the assets. And I want to say this, and this is something I'm going to drop right in the lap of the United Front. Anguilla has been number 1 in the past. It has been number 1 under the Anguilla United Front. It has been number 1 under the Anguilla Progressive Movement. And when it was number 1 under the Anguilla United Front, the Anguilla United Front, Cardigan Kana, etc., was saying it is me who did it. It is I who did it. It is we who made it happen. So if that is the case, when it's number 9, who made it happen?
Yeah. I think it is the track record of this administration in particular. They own the good, but they never own the bad.
And even when they do something that is good, and if they have any type of backlash, they try to deflect it and throw the blames elsewhere.
Yes.
It's weird. And I went to that public consultation in East End just to sit down and observe. I said nothing. Even when Jose was talking through his ears, even then I sat and I said nothing, right? And I was sitting right in the midst of some front supporters. And when they were deflecting and talking about the salaries and the highlights and Perrin Bradley and what have you, and I hear him, see, I know, the government would have never do that. It had to be Perrin, it had to be them, you know, to make our government look bad. I'm like, damn, are these people that gullible? Or is it that they are MAGA? They must be MAGA. Because only MAGA acts like that. Only MAGA acts as if they're sheeple, that they just follow. They don't do no analysis for themselves. They don't try to educate themselves on processes at all. They just go along blindly. And that is the weirdest thing to me.
I have a question to that, because just looking at the time, one of the concerns that I have is when our media tends to be the cornerstone of democracy, right? And when your media is for sale, when your media is no longer journalists, it's entertainment, when your media cannot be relied upon, your most, the media that has the most listenership, or the media outlet that has the highest listenership, when you cannot rely on media for factual information, where does that leave a nation?
Well, it's something that we see happening across the world today, even in the United States of America. Media seem to be for sale. But what it does do is it opens up the opportunity for alternative media, you know, that are serious about bringing facts, serious about doing the research and bringing the facts to the people and hearing all sides of the divide. That is why I have such a tremendous amount of respect for Keystone Graves, because it doesn't matter whether you are Anguilla United Front, Progressive Movement, or otherwise. He interviews them all the same. And he goes out there and he gets the information and he brings the factual information. So, you know, I have a tremendous amount of respect for somebody like that. But like I said, it leaves a nation with people who look at opportunities. There's always opportunities in voids. So when a country is void of media that is not for sale, media who's going to go out there and do the research should be objective and going to hear all sides of the divide and going to do some real work in terms of finding out the truth and bring it to the people. That's an opportunity. And I think that that's an opportunity in a void that's going to be filled by someone or someone's in the not too distant future.
I want to talk briefly about the tourism. I want to congratulate Stacey and on her the work that she did in Anguilla, that she did not get the thanks for. I thought it was completely distasteful what they did in the House of Assembly with this whole See Stacey document, simply because how the formatting of the ATB is, that there were other persons.
And that was a nasty piece of work, you know.
Who would have those that would have their name. That is just to say, see this person for any further explanation. That's what it's short for. And there are other persons with more references to their names, and there's nothing nefarious about that. But I'm saying the fact that they turned it into something nefarious is something that I just thought was absolutely distasteful. At the end of the day, Stacey's an Anguillian. Whether you like how she became an Anguillian or not, she's an Anguillian. And when you talk about and getting Anguillians opportunities and giving Anguillians opportunities and making sure things are retained with Anguillian ownership, but then the facility that you have as the primary example of Anguillian ownership is not being led by an Anguillian. There are more and more non-Anguillians taking up jobs in key positions. And I'm not here to say that I think that those persons don't deserve those jobs, because Anguillians go around the world and they thrive in other countries. But I'm saying it is only one party that utilized that rhetoric in the way that they did, and that's the Anglo United Front. And so when I saw Stacey, they even went as far as sending this See Stacey nonsense to Grenadian media. And I really wanted to say that to me is this
paid to Grenadian media
of women. And I hate to see women-led institutions treat other women like that. And I can tell you that Stacey is someone who I knew far before politics, and I never knew Stacey's political affiliation. Even when I was running for office, she wished me well as someone who cared about me and I cared about her. But she never said, Quincy, I'm going to vote for you or anything. I supported Stacey's candidacy as the director of tourism because I thought that she was good for the job. Apart from her experience, her interpersonal skills were what the ATB needed to thrive. A lot of the issues that they were having with the ATB is that the personnel around it were not welcoming in a way that organizations trusted them as reputable partners. That's from the stakeholders' mouths. And I thought that Stacey was someone who had the kind of personality that could bridge those, make those bridges and create lasting relationships with the organizations. And I saw that firsthand. I had CEOs and general managers of major institutions telling me that they would have never partnered with the ATB in the way that they were partnering, but it was the leadership that inspired them in the direction it's going. And Anguilla benefited from her work. We had our highest arrivals because of the level, and it's not, of course, her alone, there are a lot of persons in the ATB that make it happen, but I'm talking about leadership-wise. In my opinion, and the opinion of many, she was a great leader. Doesn't mean that there wasn't areas that she would have had to improve on. Everybody isn't perfect, but the fact that you see her going to Grenada and taking that kind of fire and dynamism to Grenada and having real numerical results, but also just in appearance. I haven't stopped seeing Grenada really and truly. After I started seeing it, I never stopped seeing it. And I never considered Grenada as a place to visit. And now that I'm like, well, yeah, I need to do that because the way how they're packaging the storytelling is just beautiful. And I mean, the country is beautiful. I've been there before, but I'm just reconsidering it and seeing it in a different lens. And I'm sure that it's no part, it's no coincidence that she's there and we're seeing more and more of Grenada. And I think that for the people who understand what tourism takes and they want to remove the lens of politics out of it, I would like to say on behalf of the people of Angola, thank you to Stacey for the work that she would have done. She didn't do it for free, but I just think that the way she was fired from the ATB, the way she was dragged through Parliament was just really just nasty and unnecessary. And when we see results like this, it is hard not to compare because you were trying to make it seem this is a woman who don't know what she's doing. And if she doesn't know what she's doing, why is Angola where it is and Grenada where it is? And I look at things like our tourism arrivals, and while we might say collectively we have the highest arrivals that we've had coming off of a 2024, 2025 high, sorry, 2023, 2024, 2025 high. So we see that there's an upward trend, and the trend began somewhere under the leadership of someone. But I am concerned with the number of day trippers. Not that it shouldn't occur, of course it should, but the fact that it's almost 50% of our arrivals, it says something to us. And the fact that the majority of those persons are only coming to one organization in the country, it also says something to us. And so we need to ensure that our marketing and the work that we're doing is done correctly. And Angola was without representation for quite some time in one of our key source markets. We just got representation, I think this last week or something of the sort.
In the US. Yep.
And you know, like it's things like that that kind of make you wonder and go, of course though. Like I say all the time, I am an Angolan at heart. And before anything else, the first label I wear is a proud Angolan. And so I want to see us recover. I wish the best for the management of the ATB. And I want to see them make the necessary choices that we can go back and say, we had a big setback last year, but this year we are in another place. But, you know, when you look at the politics of it as well, when anything happened, they were ready to drag everything, everybody, and turn it into politics. But then now, when reasonable conversations are occurring, they're saying that there's no politics that's to be involved in this.
Don't make it political.
Don't make it political. Don't make carnival political. Don't make tourism political. And then don't make boards political. But then don't make Anglic political. We were all wrong in 2020 to 2025. I think you've given us license to make air political. It is just, it's really ridiculous. And I'm so tired. I even think of like the situation in Marvet when so many persons, Hayden, don't even start on this train because we have to shut down. But so many persons will tell you to this day that the impact that she has had from over a decade ago, and the kind of treatment she received from surrogates and persons of and within the Angola United Front simply because she was not aligned with their party. We need, when I call for political maturity, I see them trying to co-opt the word and doing a miserable job at doing so. But when I call for political maturity, I am saying we need to be able to have the difficult discussions and the political discussions without demonizing the country's progress. And I think that is where the AUF falls short, that they would rip the guts out of this country just to say that they can be in power of it. Well, if you have a caucus and it's not living and it's not breathing, what do you have?
A caucus.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen.
Right before you close, I just want to say that we had a model last week, and I have not heard an address by the leadership of this country.
There was a
Right.
press release. There was a joint press release.
I have not heard an address.
Statement,
I have
a
not heard an
statement.
address
That's
by the
yeah,
leadership of this
statement.
country. I have not heard an address. I have not heard an address by the leadership of this country. We've had a droning of a tourist as well. We have not heard an address by the leadership of tourism. And these are things that I think that we should not left alone. I was able, on my own mission, to reach out to the persons who are affected, including the drowning, and express my views, my sympathies in particular, on behalf of Anguilla. And some persons may think that I'm overstepping my bounds, but I'm an Anguillian first, right? So I would admonish the government of Anguilla to remain vigilant. Do what you say you promise the people that you will do. Remove the fees, reduce the fees for ASPER, reduce the fees for health, remove the USL, remove the property tax on commercial buildings, do them. And short of doing them, you know, we're going to be bringing these motions to the House. I already put them on notice that these are 2 motions we're going to be bringing to the House. And there's others that we'll be bringing to the House. And I suspect that every time we bring a motion to the House, Quincy, they're going to say, oh, we're far advanced in terms of that. We well advanced. We well advanced. So let us wait and see what happens as we move forward.
And address school violence. You made it political in
Oh,
the
Lord.
last, in
School
the
violence
2020,
is out of control.
2025 period.
And who's the
You
Minister of
made it
Education?
political.
Who's the Minister of Education?
The
Can
PRO.
I please just say the buck stops with the minister?
But do we have a Minister of Education? Who's
The
that?
government PRO is the Minister of Education. Anyways, I take care of yourself.
Well, you know,
Good night.
the Minister of Education may be absent on a cruise. I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was another episode of APM Online Conversations with the Source. I want to thank each of you, Merrick, Quincy, and Hayden, for taking the time out and being here tonight. All of your contributions, you know, just before we came on, I was out and someone said, "Thank you so much for this program." I cannot go anywhere without a person saying, "Thank you for this program." And so thank you. Thank you for constantly showing up and for speaking and educating and enlightening the general public, because they are starved for information. They're starved for factual information. And we will be back here again next week, again, to bring you conversations from the source, APM Online. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. God bless.
Good night. Good night.